Nobody's concerned about me. Well, let's see. I've been a member of Chicago School of Media for about 10 years now. Just about as long as I've been diving. Started diving in 2012. And I've done almost 280 dives since 2012. So I've sort of got into it in a pretty big way. I love mostly going to warm water places and diving. And I love taking photographs. So I just sort of take pictures wherever I go. If you still know me on Facebook, I tend to overshare. So you see a lot of photographs that I take. But I do what I can in the water. And in this trip, there were a lot of wonderful photographers. So you're going to see some great shots, most of them not. So just in advance. That's it. All right, so there were 9 brave CMSM members that went on this trip. I've introduced them, but clearly all they want to stay anonymous. But the other thing is that it is important to recognize that the photos that you're going to see today are a combined effort of all the various photographers that were on this trip. I also want to give a special thanks to Eric Benderman who put this trip together. Thank you for that. Talk a little bit about Lembeh Strait. Lembeh Strait is in Indonesia, first and foremost, and it's at the northern end of the island of Sulawesi. The resort that we stayed at was right here, right in the sort of the middle section of Lembeh Island. The Lembeh Strait itself is a fairly narrow strait. At its widest point, it's only about a mile wide. It's about 9 miles long. And it goes down to about 285 feet in depth. It is also, the northeast end of it is this wonderful little mountain called Mount Tablat, which made for great views from the resort. So that was sort of a nice addition. The resort we stayed at was the AD Dive Resort. It's a small resort. It only has about 17 cabins and cabanas in it. So it's a fairly small, it's dedicated primarily to photographers. And so set up wonderful, pretty basic, no TVs, you don't need them, you dive all day, you're pretty exhausted, you get back after dinner, you come back, you just go to bed. And the Wi-Fi wasn't quite good enough to, if you wanted to watch movies, that probably wasn't going to happen either. You had an amazing staff. In the Lembeh, or at least at NAD, when you're diving, there is a dive master / critter finder for every 2 divers. So it's a 2-to-1 ratio, which really was an amazing component of the dive, because I don't think I would have seen even 20% of the animals I was able to see on these dives if it wasn't for Oppo, which is what our dive master was the with the blonde hair. This also was truly concierge diving. In addition to our dive masters, there were also 2 boat crews and a boat captain. And you didn't touch your equipment. Well, they took care of all your equipment. They helped you in the water. They helped you out of the water. It was really concierge kind of diving.
They took your camera to and from the camera.
That's exact.
And also, I washed all our wetsuits every night.
I know. It was really awesome. All right, so because Chris has good GPS, there are 26 dives that were a central component to the dive. Most of them were actually within the Lembeh Strait, and so these were our actual dive sites based on Chris's GPS data. So those are the dive sites that we did when we were diving. So this is the nature of muck diving. Right? You're diving in water, looking at going through silt, sand, and then rubble, looking for small creatures. And literally you get in the water and go, I traveled halfway around the world for this. This is in the middle of a dive, so we're probably 6 feet down at this point. But there are some points, you are actually diving continuously at the bottom, along the bottom of the dive. So you have to have good buoyancy. And you have to have decent fin control, or else you just stir up muck all the time. This is just a typical dive configuration. We got very good at these dive configurations. Before I showed you the slide with all the different dive sites, it's kind of like real estate property. There are sort of artificial lines that separate dive sites. Here's the typical one. Is you would often have coral in the shallow end, then you would have a generally gradually sloping slope, starting with muck and sand and silt, and then going down to rubble as you get a little deeper. And then we would end the dives at 100 feet, supposedly. Some of us not so much, but most of us stopped around 100 feet.
When you say rubble, what do you mean by rubble?
Rubble is larger rocks and stones. So gravel, kind of, that's like gravel-like material. Up in the shallower ends, there's also a lot of trash, but when you go deeper, there's not so much of that. We also took a break from muck diving, and for 3 dives, we went to an island called Bukana, and we did 3 dives up there, and those dives were more traditional coral reef dives. So we did get to see a little bit of standard coral and some coral reef diving. So that was really excellent. But the real reason you go to Lembeh is to see the critters. So what I'm going to try and do is kind of go through some of the things that I saw there that I don't typically see in most places. So this is an ambient scorpion fish. In the bottom, you get some sense of, we were all diving with macro lenses or taking really good close-up shots. A lot of the things you're going to see are really relatively small in terms of their overall size. There are other regular scorpion fish, the raggy scorpion fish and devil scorpion fish. One of the most interesting is called the rhinopius, also sometimes called the flat-hattled scorpion fish. And it is quite unique. It looks, it's not tiny, so yeah, 6 inches. Yeah.
Is it very thin?
Yes, relatively thin.
They at one point they put a flashlight on the other side of it.
Yeah, they're translucent, they are.
You can see.
So close relative of scorpion fish is actually the lionfish. In addition to kind of the traditional ones you see in this fruit all the time, which is the red lionfish, there's also the long spine lionfish, and the ones that I really found fascinating are called short fin lionfish, and they have these beautiful fans. They're really quite stunning. I have no idea. It's also sometimes called a leaf fish because there are three survival strategies. You're either poisonous, venomous, or you use camouflage. And okay, so back to these are ghost pipefish. There we go, ghost pipefish. Interesting thing about ghost pipefish, again, they use they kind of mimic leaves when they're in the water, and they swim upside down, so they actually look more like platonic material than they do like fish. And these are ornate ghost pipefish. And so there's an ornate ghost pipefish. All right, so now we have the flathead fish and the stargazer. Fascinating fish. Their strategy is to use ambush their prey. So they bury themselves in the sand with only their eyes and their mouths showing. And then when prey goes by, they'll just leap up and strike. It's particularly true stargazing, whose eyes are designed so that they can look straight up like that. And one of the interesting things about the Indonesian starfish is it can also generate an electric charge to stun its prey. All right, this is a flying grenard, also sometimes called a helmet fish. In this awesome photo, we also got the iridescent blue wings, which you don't often see. So this is just a wonderful shot. So one of the cool things about the animals in the Lembeh Strait is the relationship between animals. And so here we have the relationship between a shrimp goby and a pistol shrimp. Now, pistol shrimps are blind, but the pistol shrimp will actually create the burrow. And then they'll share their burrow with a shrimp goby. And then the shrimp goby essentially looks at it as a lookout for the blind pistol shrimp. So if there's a danger, clicking the wiggle its tail, the shrimp will retract back into the burrow. So here's a good example of marine life having a symbiotic relationship. And there's a whole bunch of different types of shrimp gobies. Some other types of gobies, the wonderful lemon goby with the big eyes that makes it incredibly adorable. And then the bubble coral goby. Gobies love to find interesting places to live. And here's a whipped coral goby. And this is often called the fire goby or the dark goby. Another really interesting is the finger dragonet. Now, the finger dragonet is this really interesting, gorgeous fish, and it's actually it's a cousin to the mandarin fish. Probably that big. We also saw some of the more traditional fish. There's a couple cowfish, a spiny boxer puffer fish, and I'm forgetting the name of my file fish. We're still sure all high. Thank you. He's got my script, so they get we can supplement for me if I don't have it. It's fine. This is an interesting. What's this one? This is a double line sunfish. Okay, yeah. Thank you. And it's just I've never seen it before, so I thought that was really interesting. All right, so there's a whole bunch of different cardinal fish in the Lembeh Straits. This one actually is called a pajama cardinal fish. But the most famous cardinal fish in the Lembeh Straits is also the Bengai cardinal fish. However, they don't actually belong in the Lembeh Straits. The story here is that they belong in the Bengai Islands, which is also close to the mainland of Sulawesi. The Bengai cardinal fish were being collected for the aquarium thing. And the thought was that a collector missed his shipping deadline. Instead of taking them, and the shipping lines are always on the south end of the Lembeh Strait. Instead of taking them back to where they belong, he just dumped them into the Lembeh Strait because he missed his boat. And the Bengai cardinal ship was found a relatively good home in the Lembeh Straits and have now become a bit of an invasive species. And they're pretty common in all the world. All right, so yeah, anemone fish aren't particularly unique to the Lembeh Straits, but they're so cute I couldn't have. They're everywhere. So on the top you have a Clark anemone. Here you have a razor spine anemone. On the bottom here you have a tomato anemone, sometimes called a spine cheek anemone. And of course, then we have the clown anemone, sometimes called Nemo.
Was a false.
Those are all real because they have the black outlines.
Nemo.
All right. So just sit back and relax or watch a video created by Tommy Coe about cuttlefish. Do I have my volume up here? Okay. I don't know why the audio is not working on this. Right now, oh no.
Is there narration?
Yes, there is narration.
We have the real thing.
Yeah. No.
Um. Anyway, absolutely. So they're different in the Lembeh Straits. And they came in all different shapes and sizes. Here's one of the tiniest of them.
That's a cuddle.
That is a baby little cuttlefish,
Julie.
a juvenile. In the Lembeh Straits, actually, one of the nice things about the Lembeh Straits. It is designed for its quiet waters. The cuttlefish obviously are part of the cephalopods, and like their cousins, the octopus. They're able to change the color and the texture of their skin almost at will. Which makes them absolutely stunning to watch because you can just watch them change colors and shapes, and it really is stunning. So they're mesmerized. Yep. This looks about coloration. They are really beautiful, beautiful creatures. Yeah.
They always look best.
Well, yeah.
Well, like a novelist, never knows where it's going.
Yeah,
Back. Yeah.
it's true. Some great video. Theoretically, when they're changing the light to dark, that's actually a warning signal. So, thank you, Tommy, for that. All right, so there are also a variety of pipefish and eel in the Mauritius. This here is a winged pipefish, and then you have a striped pipefish and a banded pipefish. Probably the most common were top reef pipefish, and they came in every shape, color, and size. And here's a really nice photo. And this one I find really, this is called a stick pipefish. It is so tiny. I have no idea.
That's the Lembeh Strait.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
It's
So it's stickers.
It's a. I don't, well, okay, so the more accepted name is like Rubengen's pipefish or something.
Okay.
I think it's different than the stick pipefish.
Okay. Well, it is amazing.
This is the one that I was describing as people use. You have to take a picture of the thread of algae that behaves a little different.
Yeah. So super tiny.
Yeah.
That whole thing is maybe a half inch long.
Wow. It's
Dean, yeah, you know, all right, so you just have to have some excitement.
there you go. So this is a black saddle eel. This is a Napoleon eel. This is your good old fashioned garden eel. And there are a bunch of ribbon eels. Okay, some cute interesting things about ribbon eel is that ribbon eels start out back to the museum, and only after he collected them did he discover that these tiny little pygmies were still there. I also think it's interesting that they come in gender colors. Kind of clear them away from the area that they rest on. It's called the long snout shrimp, the crocodile shrimp, the carrot shrimp, and the plum rock shrimp. Now, it's got a ton of names, but I like Donald Duck. I think that's a great picture. All right. So occasionally our dive masters would create photo ops for us. Okay. So here are some harlequin shrimp that have been placed on top of brightly colored sea stars. I do promise they were very careful, very gentle in the moving of the harlequin shrimp. But I promise no harlequin shrimp were not injured in any of these photos, although I can't promise they weren't annoyed. All right, there's a bunch of different type of mantis shrimp. Here is a tiger. There's a tiger mantis shrimp at the top, a red mantis shrimp over here, and then a golden mantis shrimp. The unique thing about mantis shrimp is that they have 12 different photoreceptors. And they can see color, so we don't even have. Three. Humans have 3. So they have 12. We have 3 photoreceptors. They also have what's called
3 band.
Correct. Thank you. They also have what's called trinocular vision, which allows them to see visual objects in 3 separate areas of their eyes. These are emperor. Thank you. These are emperor shrimp. Emperor shrimp have a commensurate relationship with critters. They basically like to. They don't like to swim around, walk around, so they hitch a ride almost everywhere they go. So they'll ride on the back of sea slugs. They'll ride on nudibranchs. Here they're riding on a cedar, sea cucumber. Thank you. I also it's interesting to note out, this is the female and this is the male. So the female is significantly larger in size than the male. Other shrimp have a more beneficial relationship with their host, so they're cleaner shrimp. And here's 2 different types of cleaner shrimp, a banded cleaner shrimp, and actually it's a striped cleaner shrimp, which you look up close. And this is an algae shrimp, and actually it has large clappers and it can actually make, it's kind of like clapping, clicking noise. That's sort of how it gets its name. There's a bunch of shrimp that have a commensal relationship with anemones. So here are popcorn shrimp, also sometimes called mushroom shrimp. This is a magnificent anemone shrimp because of the beautiful blue tail. This is a eggshell shrimp, and this is a Swatini shrimp. Swatini, thank you.
That's what I see.
Yeah, I did. That's what I was going for, just to get in my head. So Swatini, thank you. And you can't leave out the swat shrimp, also sometimes called the sexy shrimp. Here are some tiger shrimp and a cryptic
Sponge.
Thank you. Then we have some bubble coral shrimp and a xeno crab. Xeno whip shrimp.
It's the either the whipped coral or the inter-whipped coral. There's 2 that look very similar, and it's whether they have those spiky heads.
All right, so now we have crabs and lobsters. All right, so here's a carrier crab. They often carry anemone on them because of protection or
Upside down jelly.
That's upside down jellyfish. So they like to carry around poisonous things to keep themselves protected. This is a squat crinoid lobster. There we go. And they come in a variety of different colors. And they generally live on the crinoid, and they will max themselves in color to try to camouflage themselves.
And they're large, are they?
They're small, about 2 centimeters, small, tiny.
How did you see?
With the eyes, amazing dive goggles. Okay, here's some hermit crab, and they like to hide out in abandoned shells. And crabs will also sometimes bury themselves in sand with just their eyes not show up.
Again.
It's a great fun. This one's called an orangutan crab because it has a fairly small carapace, about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch, and then really long arms that make it look like an orangutan. All right, and this is a pink squat lobsters. Okay, again, they're also relatively small, about a 1/2 inch in size in total. And here are candy shrimp, also just sometimes called soft coral crab, candy crab or soft coral crab. They live primarily on soft coral and will actually sometimes even paste pieces of soft coral to them so they can hide even better. And this is one of my favorite photos. Awesome photo. And these are porcelain soft coral crab.
So Abhishek and I were just saying, we buddied together, and I said, I wanna go back, because so many of this stuff I didn't see. You're on the same boat.
Different mess.
Yeah.
Oh, this is my
That's.
this is my white coral xenograph. There you go. Coral xenograph. Based on the bones. All right, and this is an anemone crab. And this is porcelain crabs that also hang out in anemones. And I'm gonna let you, these are.
Those, the one on the left is a decorator crab, so it's, you can see the eyes of the crab, but then the little things that are attached to it are other living creatures. As seen on the.
And this is the white scenic crab.
And the other one is Xenia crabs.
Right. All right, so I don't know if Chris can actually do the audio from where he is.
Oh, can you hear me?
Presentation.
Christina.
Yes.
You ready?
Okay. Well, hello from Portland. And yeah, I'm gonna tell you about the octopus as we saw. So I guess Paul will sort of scroll through. Okay, so this is probably the least sort of striking. We only saw one of these. This is an algae octopus. So I don't know. Yeah, here's a video of him. So he was pretty spooked. We had him fully surrounded, and he was kind of hiding under the ledge the entire time. I had no idea there was such a thing as an algae octopus when we stumbled onto this guy until they wrote it on the little whiteboard. This is the blue ring. So everybody here probably knows about this thing. This is the most venomous octopus in the world. And the internet says that the venom from one of these little creatures can kill 26 humans. And they actually have 2 types of venom, a defensive venom and a hunting venom. And it's the hunting venom, which is the really nasty stuff. But they're also tiny. So yeah, we're not on their menu. You'd have to be pretty stupid to get stung by one. This particular one, Chris Jacobson can, I think, relate to this. So on the, I think it was the second to last dive, I was really determined to see them. So I shot down to about 80 feet and spent about 40 minutes down there trying to find this thing, ending up with a pretty sort of an unwise dive profile. But we found it at the end, and the other dive masters like called everybody down who like had very little air left to sort of, try to get a little time with this thing before surfacing. This is one of our many dives that probably finished at around 200 psi.
Wait, yeah, less.
Yeah. This is a coconut octopus doing exactly what one would expect a coconut octopus to be doing. But if you've ever seen the videos of these guys, they're really funny because they kind of take their homes wherever they go. So this particular one is going to sort of, grab his shell and scoot over the sand. And yeah, the dive masters, they carry with them clam shells, like with both halves of it, that they sort of try to tempt these guys to sort of accept and then close themselves into. We saw a bunch of these over the week, especially on night dives. I found these guys everywhere. This is the most common type. This is called an Indo-Pacific long arm octopus. And like most octopus, its camouflage is fantastic. They can just sort of melt into this sort of sand. And this one is hunting right now. You can see what it's doing is it sort of spreads its mantle so that it's covering, and it searches for food sort of beneath its mantle. And this one is very similar to the two more striking octopus, which we're going to see, which are the mimic and the wonderpuss, but it's got sort of the same body design. These really, really long tentacles and a tiny little center.
And now your next one is the.
Yeah, this was a somewhat engineered encounter between two of them. The dive masters sort of, ran them into each other.
Yeah, sort of ran into each other.
Yeah. Okay, so this is the mimic octopus, which is one of everybody's two favorites. Yeah, you can sort of see its sort of color spectrum on this. It can go this one in addition to sort of its really elaborate patterns. So it has impressions, which is why it's called the mimic. So science has acknowledged 3 of them. It can impersonate a lionfish, a flatfish like a sole, which you'll see at the end of this video, and what's the third? A sea snake. But in addition to the 3 that scientists have confirmed, divers have independently found what they think are 18. So that thing you saw at the start of the video, I think is its anemone impression. It just hasn't been fully documented, but these creatures sort of mimic the other creatures in the ecosystem, and they tailor their impression to the threat they face. So if the threat they face is scared of lionfish, they show lionfish. If the threat they're scared is they're faced with is scared of sea snake, they show them sea snake. They're really cool creatures.
Now you're one of favorite too.
Yeah, so this is sort of the the top of the. This is what everybody who's an octopus fan sort of goes to this part of the world to see. This is the wonderpuss photogenicus, and Eric was nice enough to take my picture with the wonderpuss photogenicus, which is the second one, and then here's a video of him doing his thing. In addition to the coloration, you can distinguish these guys from the mimic octopus because they have these tall eye stalks, and if you stare closely, you can see they sort of flash at you. So their eye stalks sort of have this utterly hypnotizing pattern. And this creature wasn't documented until 2006 as an independent species. And here it is just sort of melting into the ground beneath it. And so this is this little long arm octopus is stuck between Abhishek and Eric and probably still has nightmares about this. So this is what, this is about 1 million lumens coming at one octopus. And then this is just sort of to show down there, you kind of have to take care of yourself. The dive is not over until you sort of grab your dive master and say it's probably time to go up. So almost all of these dives were you stayed down. They were happy to show you creatures basically until you passed out. And so a lot of these, like I would basically be watching my computer and I knew that we weren't obeying PADI regulations, so I would let myself get down about 500, then I'd sort of nudge my guide and say it's time to start drifting up. And it was kind of rare. You can sort of see the 2 spikes here. One of them was the mandarin fish dive. We didn't really go below 20 feet, so of course that one's high. And then the other was I forget. I think there was some other reason that one sort of stayed shallow. But on any like deep dive, which is like 80 to 100 feet, it was rare to come up with above 500, which was kind of nice. But yeah, you kind of have to be careful there because they're not going to drag you up. You kind of have to drag yourself up.
Yes, and sometimes you were at 500 psi, and that's when they said, "We found the blue ring. You should come with us."
Yeah, yeah. That's when you got people banging their tanks and saying, you're gonna use 100 of your psi left to. So I was the first in the water on all the dives, and I would try to find the things I was looking for, and then on the way up, because I was usually pretty low on air by that time, if anybody was sort of having an interaction, I would just sort of shoulder them and say, my time is more precious than yours right now. Give me like 10 seconds with this creature, and then I'll get out of your way.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. That was awesome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Paul, for putting it together.
So my favorite part, which is these all the new brands we saw. Here we go. Okay. All right. Okay, very good. All right, so, back to the, so basically, you know, they belong to the sea slug family. Not all sea slugs have exposed bronchia, but all nudibranchs have exposed bronchia, and that separates them from traditional sea slugs. They also have
That means exposed bronchial.
bronchia is their breathing apparatus. So,
And in this case, we're looking at the breathing apparatus.
so, let me go to the. In this one here, for example, that is the bronchia. This also is the bronchia of the same creature. These things here are called rhinophores. And rhinophores are essentially their way of detecting olfactory sense information. And so they can use their rhinophores to detect food, also to detect partners. And because they have two of them, they can, just like our vision, they can have some degree of depth perception, and they can determine the location of things based on intensity from one rhinophore to the next.
Yeah, thanks for explaining that, because I've seen that feature on. Yeah. One o'clock.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm. So all, you know, now nudibranchs can expose and hide their bronchia within a sac on their back. So you won't always see the bronchia exposed, but they have to expose them for respiration purposes. So, yeah.
How large are?
They vary, but most of them are, you know, they go from tiny, tiny, tiny up to a couple inches. They come in every shape, color, size, configuration. They're often kind of talked about as the butterflies in the ocean. And I think that is sort of kind of true. And what's the front? Well, the rhinophores are actually in front. So if you see the rhinophores, that is the front. They theoretically have some very tiny, tiny, tiny eyes. Although generally you cannot see the eyes, and they don't really have any vision of anything. They may be able to see some outline of a shape, but they really depend more on their rhinophores than they do any visual apparatus. Okay, and that is my presentation. So
And then we've got one more small piece of it that Paul asked me to do.
All right.
Which is the night dive.
Okay, so Paul showed this guy already. This is what was this? It was a pajama cardinal fish. So I should preface this by saying we did 4 night dives as a group. So the first night dive we went to try to do was a mandarin fish mating dive, which was a bit of a bust. It was I think we all did see mandarin fish. I did not see them very well at all, but we did not see any mating activity. So the way this normally works is that you kind of go and hang out near some staghorn coral, and you wait for the sun to kind of go down, and when it starts to turn to like late dusk, these fish will come up in pairs, and for like 5 seconds they will mate above the coral, scattering their eggs and sperm. But you can't use a light to see them. You have to use like a red light, because otherwise they will get spooked and they won't do this. And in our case, even though we stayed there for quite a while, it didn't happen. But when you're stuck in one place for a while, you start to notice other things happening. So there were these cardinal fish that were everywhere. So where I was, there were these banded pipefish that just kept like, they'd go by and they'd turn around and they'd come back. So I saw him do this probably a dozen times while I was waiting for the mandarin fish to come out. This is the mandarin fish. This is about as good as it got during this dive, which is pretty good. And this was very challenging. They were kind of back into most of them were back into the coral and stuff like that. So very, very hard to see. But they are very, very pretty and very, very. This is one of these flying grenards. So this is now from a sort of a classic night dive. So there were 2 of those done by the group. So some of the things that we're seeing there was, some flying grenards. This is the coconut octopus that Chris was just talking about. I think there's another one. I don't know. Chris is absolutely right. Every dive master had a pair of these shells that they brought with them. I don't know if those were originally the octopus's shells, but he was in them by the time we finished. And I think this is a different video, so I'm gonna try to play it. I think it's the same. I came with Chris, so I think it's different. Let's see, this is a video as well, also from a night. This is a cuttlefish. That's a squid. That's right. I'm sorry. That's a squid. That's a pygmy squid. There are a lot of lionfish just kind of hanging around. Tended to see different things. This is the stargazer that Paul was talking about. Snake eels that you would find kind of buried in. This is I think a crocodile snake eel. Got his nice little feet there. Filefish. Files folded in. Puffer balloonfish. Do you remember exactly what it was? I think so.
That's a sexy joke. Did you see the fish that had its mouth?
We did see some. Well, first of all, as we discovered, we all saw different things, even though we were all diving from the same boat. We did. I don't recall seeing too many fish with eggs in their mouth. We did see some shrimp with eggs. I think some people saw mantis shrimp with eggs, maybe, right?
So clownfish with eggs, like
yeah, we saw clownfish with eggs out, damselfish, sergeant majors, that kind of stuff. This is a banded sea crate. Oh, this is a video too. So no, this is a video. These are also super poisonous. Unfortunate enough to get bit by one, but you have to try pretty hard. Venomous, yes. Sorry, I was being corrected all through the trip on poisonous versus venomous. I obviously learned nothing. What was this, Abhishek? Was this the thing? This was like this is actually
Star Wars people.
it is an awful lot like the Sarlacc. Yeah,
I know.
And there's something similar that is really truly called the Thing, but this one is kind of an anemone, tube anemone type thing that lives in the sand, and yeah. Nice detail of some xenia, I think. This is here's a great nudibranch to illustrate the lungs on the upper part and the rhinophores in the front. You got to see a lot of the same things you could see during the day if it was like a small little creature. Fish behavior was totally different. Octopus behavior was different, of course. Little crabs hiding in things.
Hey, wait, is that crab hiding in that thing then?
Yeah, hiding underneath one of those.
That's the same critter that you.
I think it was actually. Might have been the exact same that are coming by. Shrimp. Okay,
Oh, if you'd like to use a pointer, you can use my
So,
pointer.
all right, so and then I want to introduce the fourth dive that we did. We all, I think everybody that went took their first crack at blackwater diving. You've done it before.
Yeah, we did Newman have done it before.
Newman had done it before. Okay, so so blackwater diving, if you're unfamiliar with it, is you're just diving in the water column. So they put a ton of lights in the water at the top to sort of get stuff during the darkest of night to kind of come up. And they would space lights about every 5 or 10 to shine a light on it, and you would try to take a photograph. It's super challenging for a couple of reasons. One is that you're trying to take a photograph of something that's like moving like crazy a lot of the time in midwater. And then it's kind of hard on the ears because you were doing a lot of up and down, and you didn't necessarily have a reference for where you were either. So I think it's probably good we only did it once, because I'm not sure my ears could have tried, done it again. So we did find it challenging. So I took the best photos from everybody, photoshopped out all the backscatter, which there was a ton, and put it onto one single collage. That's our single collage. Yeah, when you do it this way, it looks great. So over on this side, you've got the various shrimps. I think these three are probably all nudibranchs. This is a worm. This is a juvenile mantis shrimp. So you can sort of see, he's got his arms folded up right there. So that's a mantis shrimp. I think this is a lobster, another shrimp, a crab. That's another mantis shrimp. I think this is like a comb jelly or something like that. And then over here, you've got fish. And the two that are really recognizable, this is a moray eel, juvenile moray eel.
Oh.
And so is this. So you would find them looking like this, and your dive master would come along and flick them, and they would coil up like this. And all my pictures of that sucked, because the thing you want to do is actually get the eyes in focus, but your camera wants nothing to do with the eyes, and it's getting the stuff on the outside in focus. So that's why it's so nice and small you can't tell. And then this is a flounder, probably a flounder. Yeah. So that was the night diving in Lembeh, and that's it.
Thank you.
Oh, the coiled up eel? This big around, maybe.
Everything was tiny.
The whole trip.
No,
Blackwater dive was pandemonium. It was the most fun I ever had. Going up and down, just trying
Sometimes you chase the creature far away, and then you decide, okay, they're gone. Where's the one?
You put your light like next to your chest and see dim light.
Yeah.
Where's the boat? Where's the boat?
So the larger animals don't come to the straight spots, or what?
Yeah, that's.
The sharks and.
Yeah, because basically you're only 1 mile wide.
Yeah.
So it's very, very shallow. There's no current. That's why you have the silt and the sand and the bottom. Larger fish obviously need current. That's how they swim. That's how they hunt. And so they don't like quiet protected water. That's why you have 1,000 nudibranchs, because they love quiet protected water.
So when you say quiet protected waters, you're being a little bit inaccurate. Our very first dive, we were kind of going past this harbor with all these big ships.
Well, that's true.
And you dropped out, and there's like garbage.
Yeah.
And we're like, we came all this way for this, and then you start to see weird critter.
Yeah.
Boom.
So it's kind of it's a bit of a desert down there too, in that like big critters need lots schools of fish, stuff like that. There wasn't that. So everything is either like kind of hunting
feed the critters that we found, or it's like getting plankton, because there's plenty of plankton around, but not like. Yeah, I mean, like turtles weren't there because there wasn't like this enormous amount of soft coral. Yeah.
But you'd have a little bit of coral, but you'd have like a mound of coral, or even at the shore, where you had sort of war coral, it would be like 5 feet.
Yeah.
Coral, 6 feet of coral.
Yeah.
Didn't have great big coral fish.
And so when I first heard this described, this is what it would be like, I thought, it would be kind of weird, but it was fascinating. Yeah.
But-
Every dive.
And you go, so every day I would come back, go through my, on my birthday after diving, you saw all that in one. I hate you. I really hate you. But that was the nature of it. It was just day after day after day of seeing things you read about or heard about, but had never seen before. And a lot of them were really tiny, right? And so it was also fun to work on my photography skills to say, well, how close can I get?
I think that we started off there having a dedicated room for the photography.
Yes, we did have a wonderful photo room. There was all kinds of photo booths there.
And then one thing you talked about trash.
Yeah, there was-
I saw that a lot of that in the film.
Yeah.
I remember I saw this, I thought this, a jellyfish. Wow, I didn't see a jellyfish like that, right? I have to go into the plastic bag.
Yeah,
Apparently, we talked to some divers who were there, who had been there. There was a guy from Seattle. Who had been going back there over 20 years.
our camera room.
Oh,
Yeah.
And he said it was a lot cleaner than had.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a camera.
So this was my camera station, and everything's black, so it's hard to see, but there's the camera's there, you've got a shelf for all your chargers and everything else. It was really wonderfully set up.
How many cameras did you?
Well, me personally, I had one camera and one GoPro, and then kind of a backup GoPro. That's it.
Which you left.
What?
Which you left back in.
I did leave it there, yeah.
The other thing that was really kind of fun about at least our dive master was, he was also, a pretty skilled photographer.
Yeah.
And particularly when I was trying to do the pygmy.
Yeah.
I was having horrible trying to get them into focus, and he was able to take my camera, show me how to refocus. Give me your equipment, I'll show you how to use it. And I was able to actually get a good photo. So they were incredible. They really were.
Tell your story of you and Reesmond with the pygmy seagulls.
Oh, yeah. So my camera, I have 2 bodies and 2 housings. I brought them both. Just in case, and I needed one at one point. But my newer camera, either I haven't figured out the setting or it doesn't do this, but if you fire the strobe and you try and take another picture before the internal camera flash has recharged, it will take a black picture. And so we were sitting there together trying to get these pygmy seahorses. And we get it lined up and take a picture, and it would be too soon. But we both go like, it was hilarious. Yeah. We were just, and then we get a good one. Oh, it was great fun. We had a blast.
Yeah.
That's the best part.
What's the best part?
Oh,
There's a lot.
Should I?
yeah.
So after the last day we were there, we pretty much did 2 dives instead of 3, because a lot of us had to get on. Okay, I'll try. Let's see. So because a lot of us had to fly the next morning, so we took sort of the day, like I took the day on 18 hours between flights. So we did a tarsier tour, and we saw birds. No, we saw some colobus monkeys. So let me yeah. Oh yeah, I like to show the butt too. So there's the colobus monkey. There's the colobus monkey butt. But the real reason that people go for this is to see the tarsiers, which are these tiny little primates that live inside of these trees.
Aren't they nocturnal or no?
They're nocturnal. So yeah, you had to sort of wander around in the rainforest until dark.
We did really well.
It was find these things, and then it took us like after we found them, it still took us an hour to walk out, I think, right? Yeah, we got back, we were all like mud caked and soaked and
Oh.
Yeah, they're using the lights.
but they
I
are
recorded the walk on my Garmin, and when I uploaded it to Strava, I found out that this tree is marked. with
Yes.
Strava.
Yes.
The tarsier tree,
it is labeled the tarsier tree. Yeah.
okay. So it's a given.
He was so straight there in the back.
Because then it wouldn't feel like we had, well, it was still pretty far away actually, but if you looked at where we walked,
It wasn't the straight path.